So anyway, we are here this evening and we're going to talk about preparing your tween and teen for adulthood. And Jennifer Hines has a huge amount of personal experience and professional experience in this area. And I'm going to go ahead and read her bio for you all really quick, and then she's going to present for us. So Jennifer Hines is M.Ed, has a master's in education, is a BCBA and an LBA, and has worked in the field of neurodevelopmental disorders for 25 years, and is currently a doctoral student pursuing her PhD in organizational leadership. Jennifer is the State Neurodevelopmental Disorders Specialist for the Texas Workforce Commission, Division of Rehabilitation Services. She provides staff consultation to staff, training, and collaborates with stakeholders such as like employers, school districts, public universities, legislative staff, and other state agencies in Texas, as well as nationally. Jennifer published the first vocational rehabilitation state policy on applied behavior analysis. She has published 4 additional state policies that created the first ever autism endorsement for employment specialists, an autism premium, and a vocational assessment for neurodevelopmental disorders. Under her leadership, adults and youth that enter the vocational rehabilitation program with autism have a 1.5 times higher rate of a successful outcome than any other neurodevelopmental disorder. Jennifer was appointed to the Texas Autism Council, is also Texas Developmental Disorders Council and Post-Secondary Opportunities for Person with IDD Advisory Council, is the chair of Texaba Professional Issues Committee, serves on the advisory board for Texaba Public Policy Group, and is a member of the Texaba Organizational Behavior Management SIG. Jennifer is also a parent of 2 young adults, and one of whom is autistic. So she brings personal experience along with her long list of professional accomplishments. And I'm personally excited to hear her speak tonight. I have a teen and I heard her speak at the Texas Autism Council. Thanks, Jennifer. So let me go ahead. I'm going to turn this over to Jennifer now. Jennifer's going to share her screen, and she's going to start her presentation, and then in the comments with the video there will be a Google form. So if you have questions for Jennifer, I'm going to read those at the end. Okay, and I'm going to turn this over to Jennifer now. Thanks, Jennifer.
Okay, thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here. As Jackie said, I do have 2 sons. One's 27 and he is on the spectrum, and then I have a 20-year-old who has a lot of learning disabilities, ADHD, but had a traumatic brain injury, just they think either before in utero or just after birth, that caused a global developmental delay. So everything he is progressing is about 4 years. So I'm in the midst of trying to launch him. So I'm going to talk about my 27-year-old probably more and how I did it. But I will tell you, I'm in the midst of launching another one. So hopefully this will give you some ideas. No one person, one parent's journey is the same. So I just don't ever want you to compare it to anybody, because there's no wrong way to do it. This is just how I did it. And then this is really putting in all of my years of clinical work and working for vocational rehabilitation. I started when my son was 16, the 27-year-old, and he really taught me what we need and how to transition. And that's how I based a lot of the services that I created for vocational rehabilitation based on that. So let's get started. So I don't know if you've ever heard this, but it is very real. It's called the black hole phenomenon. And that's that place where when they graduate, if they don't have a specific place to go, that black hole is where they fall into. If they don't have specific ideas, strategies, plans for that post-secondary opportunities, whether it's school, whether it's work, whether it's anything, and they end up in your house. And the people that are the most at risk is our kids. I mean, our kids are the ones that are definitely the most at risk for this. And it happens a lot. It's happening more frequent because of all the services we're doing and everything we're getting to know, but it still happens. So hopefully I want to prevent that from happening for your kiddos. So why does this happen? Well, here's some stats that are really hard to see, but 40% of those with autism that attempt college, less than half won't complete it. It's obviously not due to lack of academic ability. Only 55% of young adults with autism held paying jobs in their first 6 years of high school. And that's the lowest out of all the disability categories. And then lastly, this one kills me the most probably, is that 9 out of 10 people with autism are either unemployed or underemployed. I would say probably the latter, underemployed. So I want to share with you what I have learned for the past 11 years of being with vocational rehabilitation. These are the five common the barriers that I will see with somebody with an autism. These are it. And not only did I see this in vocational rehabilitation, when I did most of my clinical is with adults and teens. And these are the top five. If we could address these, then we really have set ourselves up for employment. So the first one, the number one thing that I see as an issue is cognitive inflexibility. Not being able to solve problems in different ways, can't handle changes in our day, can't accept when things change. I don't care how many degrees you have, how smart you are, if you're cognitively inflexible, an employer is going to have a really hard time with that. 2, social skill and communication deficits. Social skill probably being the number one. You may be really smart, but if you tell your employer he's a jerk, and so he probably is, you're not going to get far. So social skills have got to be addressed. The third one, going from 0 to 10, not being able to regulate yourself, and then if you can't regulate yourself, not able to have effective coping or appropriate coping strategies in that situation to calm yourself down. That's another one. And then 4, no reliable transportation. We live in Texas. I mean, our transportation system is not real easy, and it's not friendly. And I mean, I'm in Austin. I live by Lake Travis. And I had a heck of a time trying. There is no bus system out here, and I'm considered in the city. I'm 9 miles away from downtown, but there is no bus system. So we really have to be honest about transportation because it limits employment for sure. And lastly, poor or inconsistent hygiene. So, sensory integration issues definitely can be an issue, but not having it consistent and not wanting to wear certain uniforms or things like that, or just poor, smelling hygiene is definitely the last one that I've seen be very much an issue. So I'm going to talk to you parent to parent. I'm sure none of you want to do this. This is a picture I actually have some of my team members pick, because this is what sometimes I see parents feel like they can try to do, is that my kid is going to go to work, but I'm going to hold on and I'm going to go with them and I'm going to help them in every way I can. I just imagine in my head like them latched to the leg and wanting to be dragged to work. We don't want that, of course. So it's just a funny little pic. But I definitely, we want to talk about this. We've got to let our guys be independent, and we've got to start letting go, and we have to start letting them fall a little bit. I'm going to talk to you more about that. So hard to do as a parent, my gosh, especially if you have young ones. But once they start to get a little bit older, they have to be able to make those mistakes and find out they can stand up on their own 2 feet. So I'm going to tell you, it's kind of a silly thing, but I thought it was great when somebody sent it to me, and I forgot who sent it to me, but I'll read it. I'm not your friend. I am your parent. I will stalk you, flip out on you, lecture, drive you insane, be your worst nightmare, and hunt you down when needed, because I love you. And I think that gives us permission to do what we need to do sometimes, make our kids mad. It's hard to do that. I've had to push, prod, and have my kid, not speak to me. And I make mistakes. Definitely got not parent of the year award before. I say, and if it's everybody, right? I have a story one time. Kevin was doing something where he's obsessing over something and wanting to know for the 100th million time when he could have it. And I'm cooking dinner, and I wanted to finish my glass of wine, and he's in my ear, and I'm doing a gazillion other things. And he's telling me this, I don't know, for the, like I said, 100 zillion time. And then I finally turn around and go, guys, stop talking to me. And he turns to me, he goes, I felt that in my heart. Never forget that. That was, I felt so guilty for it. And he reminds me about it. So none of us are perfect, but we also have to remind that we are not their friend. We are their parent. And sometimes we're going to have to do the things that make them uncomfortable, cry, pout, get mad at us, not speak to us, but sometimes we have to do that. And when you have a kid who has a special need, it is really, really hard to do. And I understand that. My other one that I wanted to show you, because it is so important to find this balance, but you do have to push. You have to push, but we just don't want to push them off that cliff, right? So how far do you push? How far do you say, I'm sorry, you're having a problem with this, but you're going to have to do it. Or you're going to have to try this. You're going to have to push. And sometimes when we push, they push back, and then it gets, the behavior gets, if you've heard of behavior bursts, sometimes they get worse and more intense for a brief moment, and then it comes down, but you have to hold steady. And I've been there, done that. It's uncomfortable, but it's necessary. So that's a key. That's a key to get our guys successful, is to push, even if they're uncomfortable. So when you're shifting into adulthood, we're going to talk about home. We're going to talk about some of these things that you can do. And I'm going to shift here in just a second, but I'm going to tell my dog who is snoring to be quiet for a second. So hold on a second. Okay, he's a 110 pound dog who sounds like a very old man snoring very loud. It distracts me. All right, so shifting into adulthood. At home, what can you do? I want you to ask yourself a few things. And understand everything I'm saying to you, I did myself. I promise you. What are they responsible for at home? Sometimes because they have autism, we think that they can't. We don't want to argue with them. They don't do it really well. But we stop asking them for responsibilities. We got to continue to ask them. They've got to have responsibilities. What are they contributing to the home? Do they empty the dishwasher? Do they do their laundry? Have they even know what laundry is? My son washed his laundry, I will admit, with Gain fabric softener for like 2 weeks before I figured it out. But at least he was trying to do his laundry. So this is very good. But what are they responsible for at home? They need to at least start out with 2 or 3 different responsibilities, and then you grow as they get older. But they have to be a given that they are responsible for certain things, and that they're not going to get paid for everything. That's part of their being contributed to the household. And when they get older, and after they're 18, if they're still living with you, that's another thing. Then you need to consider them your roommate. You need to make it clear, you're my roommate. And so I'm not responsible anymore for making all your meals or doing all your chores. And so obviously there's different levels of being impacted with autism. And so you have to be mindful of that. But that's the kind of mindset you want to shift them into. Do they interact every night with the family? I know when my son was probably 9th grade, it was 8th to 9th grade was one of the worst times where he was pulling himself away, get addicted to video games, not wanting to eat, use the restroom. And so I said, okay, a rule every night when you hear me, drive in, garage door goes open, I want you to meet me down there. I want you to talk to me about your day. Just all you had to do is for 5 minutes. So I started. And he literally I would open the garage door and he'd be my face just to get it over with. Hi, I did X, Y, Z. Was an okay day? Bye. And then he would shoot back upstairs. And so that was fine for a little bit, but I would shape it. And now he's 27. He will talk my ear off, 10 years later. So, but they need to interact with the family, have dinner with the family, and interact and keep up that social interaction. Do they attend typical activities? They may not like it. I get that, but they need to attempt to. I would tell Kevin, you have to go to a football game, just one football game in your entire high school career. You have to go to one. He did not like it. He stayed longer than I thought he would. He stayed for 45 minutes, which was a shocker. He even had to go to a school dance. Well, we threatened to break some limbs on that one. We literally threatened to break our limbs on this one, but he got over it. I said, you had to go for 5 minutes and then you can come back out. When you say things like that, they end up there a lot longer. He realized he didn't have to dance. There was pizza and people were shooting hoops or just talking. And so he stayed, I think, for 45 minutes. Or 10 after school clubs, but they need to do some neurotypical things and they need to be pushed past their comfort zone. So, DoorDash has really ruined this one, but I used to make my kid call and order a pizza just to get over that social anxiety factor. So everything can be ordered online, which is like great, wonderful, but it's taking that social piece away. So if you can have them order a call and make a phone call, that would be great. That's important to do. If they take medication, do they know why they take medication? Do they understand why they need it and agree with it? That is really important. And then also, can they make a doctor or therapist appointment? Also, can they attend one by themselves? Now, you're probably going, oh my gosh, I could never let them do that. Well, no, I'm in your shoes. I still have to go because he will say something very literal and then he'll say, no, thank you. Don't need the medication. One time it was for think it was acne medicine or something. And he said, well, every time you go in the sun, you're going to have to put sunscreen on. And he's thinking every single time I walk out the door, I'm going to put sunscreen on. And he's thinking, I work at Home Depot. That would be like 50 times in my job. He said, no, thank you, and turn the medicine down. I had to go back to the appointment and reiterate that. But what I do make them do is I make them call and make a therapist appointment or their doctor appointment, and why. And I'll give them a script of what they need to say, but I make them do it. It is harder on me. It makes more effort on me. I have to push them. I have to hear the whining. I have to write the script when it would take me 2 seconds to do, but I know I have to do it because it's part of their independence. A couple more things though. Can they plan and purchase some of their groceries? Now, I started this really early. So I started, I think maybe it is junior year, and definitely senior year, but junior year, I gave them a little prepaid debit card. And I said, you're going to buy all your snacks and you're going to buy your breakfast and your lunches. And your lunches, I think, were through school. So really all he had to plan for was breakfast and snacks. And I'm going to do all your dinners. And that was, and he just did it weekly. He'd go to Randall's or HEB with me, and he would have to purchase that and budget it out. Well, that stopped the huge bags of air he was buying, which I think at the time it was like pirate's booty, and it was like $6 a thing, and really only this much food was in there. So you really had to find what the value of groceries is and stop asking for all these very expensive things, and also had to kind of make sure he had enough, he had a plan for the week. And so that really helped him, especially when he started to think about moving out. Do they have a checking account? Do they know what's in it? Do they even know the value of it, or do you pay all their bills? Making sure, hey, you know what, you're going to contribute $50 to your, your phone or the internet, things like that, especially when they get a job. And even if they don't, then part of the responsibilities the home pays for, they may have it to pay you with money, but they are paying you with the responsibilities in the home. Do they have a plan for transportation? Do you know if they drive? Can they attempt it? Can they ride a scooter? Can they order an Uber, a Lyft? My 20-year-old does not drive, and so but when he can do an Uber or Lyft like anybody's business. Do they even know why they have an IEP or a 504? And sometimes that's really addressed well in the schools, and sometimes it's not. So I'd ask that. And then, do they ask for what they need in school? Can they say that I need X, Y, Z accommodations? Do they know those things? Important questions to ask. It's going to tell you a lot. And this last one, just like when I talked about cognitive inflexibility as the #1 issue for employment. So can they accept changes in their daily life? I know if you have one that's in the middle or starting, puberty, it's gonna be really hard. Their anxiety tends to triple at that age. And so that makes, if they have obsessive compulsive or obsessive thoughts, it makes them so much worse. And I do get it. I have both of them had panic attacks. I mean, we're talking, I carried Xanax in my purse so I could whip that up when I needed to. It can be really hard, but cognitive flexibility is really important. And then also making and creating things during their day where they have to change is important. So not making things very predictable and, sorry, this changed, guess we're gonna have to work with it. So it's very, very important. So all of that's a lot, right? I'm going to show you how you just take it piece by piece. I mean, just asking yourself that. But you don't need to be alone. And it's not easy. I'm not going to tell you what it is. There's easier times and harder times, right? But you want to have people on your team. Even I have had to grab and have advocates and have, fellow colleague behavior analysts attend ARDS with me when I was in conflict with the school. I even had to go to due process with one of my school districts for my kids. And you're not objective when you're a mom. I don't care how much education and expertise you have, it's emotional, and so you do need people on your team. And also by the time they get to be 18, 19, 20 years old, you are tired. I mean, it's a lot of work to raise these kids, and they're such a wonderful joy. But I have to admit, I know there was times where I didn't have the energy to do and to push the way that I needed to. And then not only do I not have the energy, at some point at the age you're all going to experience, if you're not experiencing it now, is you don't know diddly squat because you were the parent. No matter what my credentials are, none of my kids, they cared. And so I had to bring other people. I'm doing that currently with my 20-year-old. I'm trying to help launch him out. And I brought in the vocational rehabilitation counselor and an employment specialist and a vocational specialist and a driving instructor because I know nothing. Every suggestion I give is not worth it. And so he's wanting that autonomy. He's wanting to kind of push away, and he's needing people on your team, because it does take a village. So I encourage you to look around and reach out for that help and gather people on your team. Oops, I'm bigger. So when we're shifting into adulthood, I'm going to talk about school. And there's some things I want you to ask yourself about school if you have somebody who's still in it. So something about special education. And I have been teaching, I think I had to think about it the other day. It's like 2001 is when I started teaching. We were using triplicates back then. And I teach 2 graduate courses too. And I was teaching one last night. It's kind of like special education 101. And we were talking about how, just in the 90s is when special education really came about. And at first, special education was amazing. We were so grateful that we finally could modify and accommodate for these kids. And we were fighting for their rights. And now, I think 30 years later, I really do believe that we may have gone a little too far with how much we accommodate, how much we modify, how much we protect. And there are some unintended consequences that I've seen clinically and through my own kids. So I want you to ask yourself, if these things are occurring, it doesn't mean you can't fix them, but being honest, you can't change the problem. I think Dr. Phil says that unless you acknowledge it, right? You got to acknowledge it. So have we accommodated or modified too much? Have we just assumed that they can't do this or they need this? That we need to ask ourselves that. And then if we have, a lot of times this promotes learned helplessness. I see this a lot with students, and colleges are reporting that they're seeing this, that they immediately will go, I don't know. Teacher, can you help me? Right? And this goes to the next one. Have we created dependence on adults instead of relying on their own critical thinking, because they're so used to going teacher or their aide or somebody else, and we've created somebody who just doesn't know how to problem solve, or they feel like, I have a disability, there's no way I could know that answer. In helping, have we stopped or prevented opportunities for them to fall? Everybody falls. We learn from our mistakes, and I am just as guilty of doing this, where I did not want to let my kids fall, but you have to. It's the only way they learn that they can get back up on their own feet. That builds your self-esteem. That builds your ability to be self-reliant, and then your self-determination. You have to be able to pick yourself up. So they do need to fall. So when we don't let them fall, we create that unrealistic bubble of like, oh, this is this perfect environment where nothing ever really hard happens to you. We let you out in the hallways 5 minutes early, so there's no conflict, no people around you, no sensory issues going on. I give you my headphones so that you never have to listen to any kind of uncomfortable noise. And I'm not saying that everyone needs to take those away, but you should start thinking, is it really necessary? Could we desensitize them to that? Can we start pulling this back? Can they feel a little uncomfortable so they can relate to the world a little bit more, and also fall down if they need to? Because when you do that unrealistic bubble, let me tell you, when you do get into college or they go into work, that bubble bursts. And then I see that at this age, work I do in VR. So, but it's never too late, even if these unintended consequences have happened, there's things we can do, right? So how much is really needed to modify or accommodate? What do they really need? Are we asking ourselves that? Do we even know? Because sometimes you start something in 6th grade and just goes all the way to 11th grade, right? Is the student asking for them? Like, do they say, I need extra time? Are they saying that I can't do this whole test, I need you to, mark it down to 5? We're just giving them 5 questions versus the 15 questions, right? It may be a sign they don't need them if they're not asking for them. And we just didn't even see it, right? You really want to be strategic. So I've been in the ARD meetings where you've got the accommodations list and half of that sheet is marked down. And it's marked all the way across through all the classes, right? Maybe we don't need them for all these classes. Maybe we can start marking them off like, you know what, he really needs it. He's got dyslexia and he's really struggles with that comprehension and his fluency. Let's just do reading. Oh, you know what? Let's go ahead and do history, because history's got a lot of, reading for them to do. You know what? Math and science, pretty good at it. And it's not as much, reading in there. So let's take that off and see if you can kind of be more independent. They teach you. And when you do, that's a celebration. That's like, look at you. You are becoming more and more independent. This is amazing. Take off those training wheels. And then also just provide them opportunities for them to stretch and feel uncomfortable, because that the world is uncomfortable. And there's going to be things they don't like to do or don't want to do. We all have that. And sometimes we really try to protect them from that. But that's your natural instinct as a parent to do. But I'm telling you, that is, it makes it so much more hard for them when you want them to launch, because what we would all for them to launch, whatever their launching looks like, we want them to be able to launch as much as they can. So the successful transition, it really does start with a roadmap. I mean, everybody's got to have a plan. I'm sure you're thinking, well, I don't know even how to get to X, Y, Z, right? Well, we're going to start with the school first. I'm going to talk to you about that. First, the first step is you got to know where you are. Like, what is this baseline? I'm a BCBA. Of course, I love data analysis, but I always need to know, where am I in order to figure out where I got to get. So the first thing I do is really ask for a good assessment, a transition assessment. There are so many of them. It can be overwhelming, but you want to find out what their strengths and their deficits are. And you want to be able to look at it and go, okay, we're here. And these are these things we're really good at. These are the things we're not so great at. What can we focus on first? And sometimes you don't have to focus on all of them, because one might titrate down to the other ones, right? So if you're able to be more cognitively flexible, you can problem solve, you have more critical thinking skills. It has a lot of different things that it'll titrate to. Another a really excellent parent resource right here, and you'll have access to this PowerPoint, is Texas Transition website. It's linked there. They have so many transition assessments that parents can look at, teachers can look at. There's lots of them. I would ask your school which ones they like. Vocational Rehabilitation has one that we pay for. So go ahead and get one so you can figure out what your baseline is. So the next step, though, is, okay, well, where am I going? And there is no way, I understand that you're going to know exactly where you are, but you're going to just have an estimate. And every year you can adjust it. In fact, you should adjust it every year. You don't have a crystal ball. You can't read minds. You don't know where they're going to be. Where I thought my kid was going to be when he was 16 and where he is at 27, I couldn't have imagined it. I did not think that he would be where he's at. I would have thought that he has a sense of humor he has. He is so funny. He is flexible. He is just creative, and he lives on his own. I did not think he could live on his own. I was really questioning that. So many things that he can do, that there is so much growth from 15 to, I'd say, early 20s to late 20s. It takes a while. It's a developmental disorder. Where they are 18 means you're about 14, right? You got to always keep that in mind. So I have an example of what I did with Kevin, and this is was my roadmap. And I'll talk to you about like the issue we were facing and then what we decided to do. And it was based year by year, okay? So 9th grade, severe anxiety. We are talking panic attacks all the time. Had to have a map of the school, very, 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 very rigid. Would not talk to people. In fact, inability to engage with people. And so what we did was, he was at that time very fixated with computers. So we found a way for him to work with the school computer technician. All he would do is he would like bring people their computer paper or some of the cords that they had to do to hook their computer up. And he would have his head down the entire time. He would go and slam the paper down on their desk and walk out. But we didn't require him to engage. We just really wanted him to be around people and have to go into a classroom that made him uncomfortable, just to get him kind of slowly shape that behavior. But that he did that all year, and he also was an office aide, and just being around people and having to do different things really helped him with calm his anxiety. And severe anxiety, because there's a big transition, right? You kind of expect that 8th grade, 9th grade, huge transition. So it's the fear of the unknown, right? All those things. That whole year he did it, and it really, really helped him out. 10th grade. So he was making progress with his overall anxiety. I don't think I was running to school with a Xanax pill, every couple days. It was much better. But he really just hadn't generalized it in all settings. So there was progress, but he was still freaking out if he had to go into the community and do certain things. So what we did was we started doing work experiences that were in various environments. One was a daycare center, where I was like, what? Why would you have and go to a daycare center? because I knew he'd hate it, but it was funny because he came home and said, well, I found out today I hate children. I said, okay, that's good. Check that off your bucket list. He still doesn't like children. In addition, though, I did the same things that I mentioned before. He went to typical high school events, football games, and dances. It was hard to get him to, but he did it. That was in 10th grade. It really made him a little more flexible, and he actually found out there were certain aspects of it that he liked. 11th grade, he just couldn't self-advocate. He wouldn't say what he needed. And he really didn't know how to identify his strengths or weaknesses. He also did increase in his cognitive inflexibility, and we're still working on that social anxiety. So we're getting better in some areas, but others we needed to work more. So now we increase the outside community. So we went from in school to, testing things out. You didn't really have to, you were maybe there a couple of days, to now we're going to go to more community work experiences, and we're going to work for 4 to 6 week big rotation. So you're going to have to be there for a while and learn all the skills. And that really helped him understand what he was good at, what he wasn't good at, made him do all sorts of different jobs and be more flexible. In 12th grade, though, still peer social engagement. We were best friends. We could talk to teachers. We talked to the computer technician. We could talk to the Walgreens guy. We could talk to all these adults, and we were doing good, but we were just not engaging with peers. And I know you know that to be an issue. Still was very literal, very, I'm sarcastic, and so I would say things just to get his goat. But we were still working on that. And then work stamina. He really didn't want to work for very long. He's like, he just kind of wanted to do a couple hours. He didn't have that stamina going to work more than that. So the pinpoint for that, for our map, was he obtained his first paid job, and it was at Michael's. And it was during one of those work rotations. He was organizing the ribbons aisle, and he organized it better than anybody. And so the manager was like, I'm going to offer you a job. And he only offered it. It was 5 to 6 hours a week, and school would take him, and then I would have to pick him up. But it was great. It was the first job, and it helped. But he needed intensive job coaching. I'll tell you, his literalism showed up when, I went to go pick him up, and literally, I think I had to pick him up by 7, and I was there at 6:52, and he's like, "Oh my God, you cannot be here. It's 6:52. You cannot be here. I have things to do." I was like, "It's okay. I will come back in 8 minutes." So things like that. He almost got fired because he had a walkie-talkie. They were asking him questions, and when he didn't have the answer to the question, he ignored it. He ignored the walkie-talkie. So his hours started to be dwindling until we figured that out. And all we had to teach him was, hey, I don't have the answer to that. That's it. Or I don't have the answer to it, but the person in the orange, jumper has it. So not hard, but definitely was an issue. Sorry. So graduation hour, there's Kevin. He's in his Home Depot little outfit that he was in for 3 years. Was do we graduate him or do we go to 18 plus? And I'll be honest, I thought he was doing 18 plus. I thought that's the road we're going to go to, right? That's not what we did. And that's polar opposite of what I did with my youngest one, who I did not think would do 18 plus. He needed 18 plus. But what we did was we looked at transition assessment, and it said he had all the skills for what his developmental stage was. That really what he needed to do was to work for a while and obtain more life skills. And that all could be addressed at home. That school had done what they could do. And he was just where he needed to be. And the 18 plus wouldn't have helped him because he obtained his first full-time. Well, it started out 10 to 12 hours a week and then ended up about 6-7 months into 20 hours a week. So he obtained, his first really paid job, May of his senior year, and he just needed to work. So we decided not to do 18 plus services. And I do want to talk about that 18 plus because there are so many times where our kids really, really need to stay in school. So hold on just a second. I hope you're getting a comic relief from this. I'm throwing things that might make them stop. I can't come out who want to come in. But anyway, okay.
We can't hear him. This is Jackie, but we can't hear the dog.
You can't hear him? Oh my God. Well, the speaker is right. It is bad, but okay. It'll distract me. Okay.
All right.
Maybe you're getting comic relief from it anyway, from me throwing things at my dog. Okay. I do want to encourage, though, to slow down with graduation and not be so fast about we're going to graduate. Many parents don't know this, but I want to share with you Commissioner's Rule 89.107. say that by heart. You don't need to. And there's 5 reasons 5 ways they can graduate somebody who is on an IEP. And we know most of them, they have to meet their graduation plan. They can have full employment. They don't need ongoing supports. They're attending college or they're aging out. Okay. But the one that the school districts a lot of times just don't tell you about, or they don't mention, is that they cannot graduate them unless they can show you that they have specific employability skills and they don't need ongoing supports, or they need very little supports. So I have worked with many districts and a lot of special ed lawyers where I go in and advocate for them. And there was one particular case that they had the bag and they were ready to graduate him. He was 20. He had 1 more year to go. He still had a one-on-one. He was aggressive. He was not independent. He had not had any vocational training, and they wanted to boot him out. So we held to our guns, and I specifically said number 3 and said, show me where he's employable. And they couldn't. And so they had to hire a one-on-one teacher, and they had to do a specialized transition program for him for this last year of eligibility. And let me tell you, he was amazing. That 1 year did everything I thought it would. And he was so much more independent and ready to leave the school district. So you have a right to slow down, take the time. They are developmentally delayed. And so even if all the academics have gone, now you can't do this unless they're on an IEP. So to have something that was modified. So if everything was accommodated for, they don't qualify. But if they had even one class, just one class modified, they can qualify. And so maybe they just need 1 more year. That 1 year is looking at life skills. Maybe it's getting the work experience, getting their first paid job, but they have a right to it. So I just want you to think about that. And then if you do graduate them and oops, things are not going so great, by law, the district has to hold an ARD to consider the student back in school if one's requested. So I want you to be aware of that. And don't ever let school districts tell you that they don't have an 18+ program, because that's against the law. They should. Now, not all of them have great ones, but they are supposed to have them. Okay, so post-graduation, he just needed time to learn to work and get work values and get momentum, and then gain independent skills. So really know how to cook stuff. I had like cooking lessons that we were doing, and just become independent. We want him to move out. It took about 1.5 years after he graduated for him to move out. And I moved him literally like less than a mile away from me. He needed weekly support from me, but getting them out of the house, let me tell you, it's going to be harder on you. It's more work on you. But the longer they stay in the house, the harder it is, one, to get them out, because they become more and more dependent, and they don't like transition. So the longer they stay, the harder it is. 2, there are still, when you walk into your parents, if your parents are still alive, I still my parents, when you walk into their home, you're back to being a child again. I mean, everybody is more childlike when they go into their parents' home. So are yours. And so the longer they stay home, and I know it's not always an option for everybody to have their kids move out, but the harder it is. And so I'll tell you, I had to move mine out, and I've had to move him back in, and then I've had to move him back out again. That happens too. I had to do that when we transitioned to a full-time other job, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. And that's okay. But I also knew your butt's going to get out now. It may take me 8 months to do it, but you're going to have to go. He learned to drive across the street. In fact, I moved him from Home Depot, and his apartment was literally across the street. And that was nail biting, because it was a 4-lane. It was 620 if any of you are in Austin, but it was 4 lanes. So it really made me nervous. But he learned to do it, and that made him independent. All I had to do for driving was drive across the street, drive back. And just that little bit made him much more independent. Obviously, me not have to go pick him up, or get peers to take him there. So he worked at Home Depot for 3.5 years. And then it's like, okay, you're doing amazing. Now we know you can do something else besides Home Depot, but I had no clue what. So I went back to BR, did some career exploration to kind of get his career job. And that's where he is today. So today he has been there for 5 years, working full-time as a mail clerk. Mail clerk was identified as a job that he would do great for. I didn't realize how many mail clerk positions are available. He works downtown for Texas Workforce Commission. He knows all these important people that I don't know. He cracks me up. At first, he rode the bus, and he lived a little further away, but we moved him closer. He's about less than a couple miles from work. And when COVID hit, I was like, oh, I really don't want you to be in the bus. And just being on the bus anyway took 45 minutes for a 2 or 3 mile trip. So we got him an electric scooter with his stimulus check, and now it takes him 15 minutes to get to and from work. And he loves it. He does great. Has there been issues? Sure. He wasn't paying attention one time, and it was last year, and it just started raining, and he had an accident on a scooter. He was not a car or anything. I mean, we taught him to go the right routes, and he busted his chin open, but he handled it well. He needed stitches, and he handled himself well. And so things are still going to happen. Things are still scary. It's definitely not perfect. He still does those things, but he's doing really well. So that was my roadmap to get Kevin to where he is now. We still have things we're working on. He would love to have a girlfriend. I would love for him too. He's obsessed with a lot of websites for a long time and then gave up on it, dating sites. I'd love for him to do that. So hopefully that will happen. He's gotten promoted in his job. He's happy where he's at. He may change jobs. I don't know. But for right now, that's where he's at. He's doing really well, lives in a studio apartment, and pretty happy. And he doesn't really want a lot to do with me. I have to call him and go, hello, my name is Mother. Let's have lunch. So it's a good place he's in. So I do want to talk about early employment experience, because that I did not understand the effects of employment until I experienced it with my own kid. I did not, and being a BCBA, I tout myself being able to teach social skills and teach flexibility. Employment taught him more social skills and cognitive flexibility than anything ever has. They are pushed, their peers, there are spontaneous situations that happen. You feel an ownership of going there, and you're not, it's really hard to do when you're a mom, pushing them. It's hard to be that therapist teacher role. It doesn't really work, right? And so getting out there, he was forced to. It really works. It does for everybody, our kids even more. So everybody needs their first job. I hear parents tell me all the time, doesn't need to get a first job. He's going to college. He's going to be a doctor. Great, wonderful. Still going to need their first job, because it's not about what they do. It's about learning how just to work, right? The earlier the better. Don't wait till they're 16, even if they're just a summer job. The earlier the better. We all had jobs we didn't like, right? So we all could name a handful of jobs you had. You could tell which one you didn't like, but it's not about loving it. It's about learning how the real world works and being exposed to it, right? And being exposed to it is really important. And nobody comes out of college with their career job, although I can't tell you how many of ours do. They think they graduate and then like, whoa, where's my full-time paid job with benefits? Or maybe that's a millennial thing. I don't know. But I definitely see that more and more, and we don't. Nobody gets that career job. And no matter how small it is, I don't know how you got to where you're doing for a living, but I didn't think I'd ever work for vocational rehabilitation, nor would I be getting a doctorate in organizational leadership. And I'm doing that because I can see how when government is unhealthy and is dysfunctional, you can change the behavior of an organization just like you can people. And that's why I'm doing it, because I want to help make government more efficient to work with our guys. So little jobs, no matter how small they are, they give you opportunities to the ones you really want, right? I just, for a minute, I'm not here to try to tout vocational rehabilitation. I don't know what your opinion is. I can just be honest. I know there's amazing counselors that I'm aware. I have a team of counselors that are especially trained for autism. And you can ask for one of them. I have about 82 on my team statewide. I know not everybody's had a great experience with vocational rehabilitation. I'd be happy to help you find another counselor that works better. I'll tell you, there's been a lot of turnover. They have really high caseloads. So same thing you're always going to have to, just like the schools, is you're going to have to be proactive and just work with the agency, right? We do have some amazing programs that I would love for you to take advantage of and really be part of that team that I talked about. Summer Earn and Learn. That's a new initiative in the past 3-4 years. It's a great way. I know Jackie said her son participated in that. She could attest to it. But it's a great way to dip their toes in it. 6 to 8 weeks, depending on the work environment, work experience they're paid for. So how amazing is that? That's a great opportunity. Vocational adjustment classes. They have tons of classes like management, the money management, the social skill thing. It can be how to have relationships. It can be about how to job hunt and do career exploration. They have tons of classes that they can do work experiences. So they can just do specific work experiences that they're not paid for. Applied behavior analysis, I put that in there. So individual or social skill groups, vocational assessments are important. They're there. And these are just very small things that we can do. transportation needs to see if bus training or driving, can they drive? So we have specialized driving assessments to just see if they have the ability to drive. Do they have that processing speed to do it? And then driver instruction. Taking their first job or come back and advance in one. Underemployment is real. And I want to encourage you, if you have an adult child who's in their 30s, 40s, I love working with those customers that come to us who are so smart or have such great skills, and they've always been underemployed, and we help them advance in their employment. And lastly, college, technical, certificate training, even staying in school and the support services that, not only doing the training in the college programs, but actually keeping them in those programs and keeping them successful, we can support. So hopefully you can think of that if that is an option for you to add to your team of help. I know I have to utilize them as well. So it's about 8:16. I figured I'd wrap up at about 8:15. So I'm going to give you some tips for success, some things that I've seen that work for myself clinically that I do, and then I recommend for my vocational counselors when I do case consults with them. So one, I'll just be really honest. I'm very clear about this. You can't let your child play that disability card because once they have it, and believe me, mine try to pull it all the time. Not as much anymore, but they tried. But I have autism, right? It doesn't define them. It does not define them, and it doesn't give them excuses. And the next one is when I think twice today I had to say to somebody, is that we can't allow for bad behaviors. Bad behavior are just bad behaviors. And sometimes it's not getting what you want when you want it. And then so you have a little tantrum about it. That's just bad behavior. Yeah, some of the autism plays into it, but that's something you have to learn to be, right? And also they're teens and they're young adults and they have hormones and they're going to be a little bit rebellious. And when I think Kevin the first time talked back to me, I was like, don't you? Oh, that's normal. Yes, but don't you do that. Right. So you want them to talk back. You want them to be a little bit of that neurotypical. That's a great sign of them getting neurotypical and showing more signs of it, but it doesn't mean that you need to tolerate it. Not all behaviors are because of disability. Sometimes just being a teenager. Yeah, ask for help. I don't know about you, but I have a hard time asking for help, especially because I'm the professional. So sometimes it's hard to ask, but ask for help for sure. Take 1 year at a time. Take 1 month at a time if you're in a place. Take 6 months at a time, but don't try to take it all at once because it's just too overwhelming. Just focus on what you need to and then readjust it. And know that even if you didn't focus on something or you felt like you had to focus 1 year, you're never going to fail. Just get back up there and focus on what is needed at that moment. I want you to focus, but I also want you to plan for the big picture. So the big picture is one day we want them to be able to have and be able to be in a group home and be successful in one and have less, one-on-one need, or move out on their own, move out with a friend, or whatever that is. Start moving towards that. What do they need to look like that? And just have that big picture, but then readjust it. And then lastly, don't rush through the school system. They have the legal right to be there to 21. And it's no longer this really bad stigma to stay in. They can graduate with they can walk the stage with their peers and they can get that, they'll get a piece of paper, but they won't actually get the completion until afterwards, but they can walk, they can feel like they're there. Many programs don't make them go back to the same school. They go to a different school or a different program. Most of them are in the community. Nobody will know if they were there, and they can just work on things that they need to because they are developmentally delayed. And even if they're going to go to college, but again, they have to have one modified class. But even if they're going to go to college, maybe they're not ready for college at 18. Maybe they're ready for college at 20. I just really hate when I see people go, because I graduated and I'm 18, therefore I'm going to, school right away. And then they fall and they're not successful and they don't return. And it's a huge thing on their self-esteem. So take your time. It really works better. And it should be a no rush. Do it when they're developmentally ready. So as I wrap up, though, I'm going to ask, I'll be available for your questions. If you're interested in vocational rehabilitation services and you are not with them, you can click right here. It's called My Start My VR Services. You can do it online and they will help get you routed to the office that you are closest to, most convenient to you. It looks like this. If you go to their website, that's what this is linked to. If you are your student is attending a high school, most high schools have been assigned a vocational rehabilitation counselor. And so you can just ask the high school who that is and how to get in contact with them. There's some of them or if they're in a rural area or very, very small, maybe they haven't had somebody assigned, and we can get somebody assigned for them. But understand, be patient. The fact there's less than 200 transition vocational rehabilitation counselors, and there's like 1,200 high schools. So they have a big caseload. But nonetheless, we have a lot of great services that your kiddos can benefit from. And I hope this has helped you. I don't have anything else. That's my email address that you can contact me if you're having issues. I don't mind at all. And Jackie, we can open it up for questions. I'll stop sharing.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks,
Yeah.
Jennifer.
Okay.
Okay, that was really helpful. Good info. I was taking notes. Thanks. Okay, so we do have a few questions, and let's see. Okay, so first of all, somebody asked, do you have any ideas for assisted living? This person said, I love my son, but would love for him to have more independence, but I don't see him being able to live on his own.
Yeah, I have a lot of experience with group homes. Of course, there are ones that you can get through the Medicaid waiver programs that have different agencies that run them. DNS residential. I think they changed their name. I used to work for a lot. There's many. Kenmore is one of them. I do think that sometimes one of the best ways, if you can do it, is when parents get together and if they have like-minded kids and helping them, go into an apartment or go into a home. And maybe you have a caregiver that stays and shares with all three of them. I mean, that could be some of the best ways to do it because you have more control over the situation in these group homes. The agency is hiring and firing and has more control, but sometimes you can't do that. But I've been in some wonderful assisted livings, and there's not enough options though for our kids. I'll tell you that. I always had dreams of buying an apartment complex, and because I would tell you, if I could buy one, and I could have anybody who wanted to live there and they happen to be on the spectrum, I would love that because I know my kid would love it because he wants his own place, but he would interact and have a friend if he could walk down the hallway and knock on the door, or was introduced because, and then, Median Center, right? They had a movie and they got to know each other. That'd be great. But it's hard for him to go out and find people. His coworkers, as much as he's included, are not his peers. That's the problem with inclusion. I mean, I love inclusion. I get that, but none of them are peers. A commissioner is not his peer. Even the people at, the mailroom are really not his peers. And so it's hard when they leave school to find them. So that's a tricky question. Hopefully we'll have more.
Yeah, I agree. We get that question a lot from parents, and it is definitely, there's not enough housing options, that's for sure. But work on your independent living skills now, everybody at home. Do the dish, all the stuff Jennifer said. If you do that, that's going to help. So then another question is, somebody said the school continues to say they don't have an 18 plus program. What can I do? So
Justin Porter is the special director of special ed for TEA. We've had this discussion. They're supposed to. And in fact, we're going to be doing some things where hopefully we'll start kind of making districts kind of become aware that they don't have one and kind of show up on a list somewhere. But as of right now, there's two things you can do. One, you could, fight back a little bit, push back, do mediation, do process. Sometimes you're tired at that point. Others, their 18 plus program would be one that would set your kid back. And so you just can't do it. So you have to make that choice. I can't fight that. I can't fight that battle because it's going to hurt me and my kid. So sometimes you have to make that decision. That's a hard one, I know. They are supposed to, a lot of them, or they will have a program that is not adequate and won't meet your kids' needs. They are, and maybe you can partner. That's what the districts that don't have 18 plus programs, it's when I really want them to work with vocational rehabilitation because we can partner with the districts to fill in what they can't. And so if they don't have a really good program, then we can supplement some of that. But what I want them to do is keep them in because we can't keep them in 8 hours a day, or just at least a couple of days a week. We can't provide the wraparound support. So if school can, help supplement that and keeping them there, we can provide some vocational adjustment classes. We can bring in a job coach and help them get a job and job coaching. So there is a partnership. And so maybe talk to your school about who is helping them with vocational rehabilitation. That's a win-win when we partner together, because I don't think the school has to do it all, and I don't think VR can do it all. When I first started it, we were very disconnected. It was like you graduated, you got a little card says, "Hey, there's an agency over here," and there was a gap, and then that's the hole. That's where they fell in. And now some legislative has happened in WIOA where they have to cross over, and we start at 14, so that the gap is not there anymore.
Great, thanks. Okay, and then another question. Okay, it says, we have a child that will be going to college. We are torn on having him live at home and drive to school or live on campus. His kindness was taken advantage of in junior high. So we have a concern it will happen again, especially with what goes on at the dorm. They're also in a big city, so traffic is another concern. And then it says, any insight on living arrangements, especially freshman year?
So there are colleges now that offer programs specific to autism that provide the support so they can be successful. So I mean, they would check in on their housing, and if they're being bullied, and they would provide weekly check-in sessions with them and person-centered plans on what they need. So you can find a list of those at the Texas Higher Education Board. There's a list of them, and Jackie, I probably can get you that link for that. It would help, but I can give you. So just off the top of my head, I'm usually the one over the contracts. If VR is going to support them, I typically am the one over that. So right off the top of my head, Texas Tech University has one. University of North Texas has one. UT Longhorns is about to have one in the next 2 weeks. There's one called Campus Connections that is virtual, that will offer anywhere, as long as you have 5 students that are there. They also do Concordia College. Then there is University of Houston Clear Lake has one, and LeTourneau. They're about to get one. So it is something that Texas Tech started. It's a template, and it is being, they are passing it all over the state, and people and universities are replicating it. So you have much more options than you ever did just 5 years ago.
Yeah, and I think people can also like contact student services or disability services at the college too, if they don't have a set program, right? Is that
you can absolutely. I'll just say that historically hasn't been as successful. If you're really concerned about them anxiety wise or bully wise or advocating for themselves, that's why.
Good to
just
know.
Being honest, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's good to know. It's good. No, we would rather have the inside scoop. Okay, someone else asked, and I don't know if this is a question for you or general for Autism Society, but I'll answer it for Autism Society. It says, are you aware of any bilingual services available for autism support? And I'll just say for us, we have an INR specialist that is bilingual Spanish, and then we definitely know some therapists that are Spanish speakers. Are there Texas Workforce Commission and Voc Rehab programs with Spanish to accommodate Spanish speakers, Jennifer?
I'm not going to say specifically, but they will accommodate. Yes, we will have interpreters. We have counselors that speak Spanish, but we will also pay for interpreters to make sure that parents and students can understand for sure.
Okay, great. That's good to know. And then let me just, okay, I'm sorry, I'm trying to scroll down. I'm reading the questions. And then it says, somebody asked, if things are not going well with the Voc Rehab counselor, what do you recommend?
Well, you have a right always to ask for another counselor. And you have a right to ask for a counselor who's been trained in autism. There is I have what's called a state neurodevelopmental specialist team, and they are specifically trained in autism, and that's what their specialty is. So one, you can ask for somebody who's been trained in autism who's there. I have one in every office that's there. So that, or ask just you to have a transfer and tell them why. You have a right to ask for their supervisor, manager, and take it up the chain. Ultimately, disability rights can get involved, and you have a right to file a complaint, and they can help you on their behalf. I work really well with disability rights. I know all of them, and they come to me, and a lot of times I'll say, "Yep, we messed up. We need to provide X," or "No, that's probably not too appropriate." So but we make sure that the customer's needs. But it's about speaking up and saying something. You could always email me if you want, and I can tell you, hey, I know somebody in that area and can give you a name that would help you.
That's great. Thanks, Jennifer. And I think for all these questions, if we have resources, we'll compile them all and we'll put them back in the link with this video at the end too. So people can always email us as well. And we get questions about Texas workforce and the client assistance program at Disability Rights Texas for people that really, need extra help. But there's definitely options. And like Jennifer said, they've got all that done, there's voc rehab counselors with the, autism training that Jennifer developed. So there's definitely people out there that can work with you and help you.
And there's also employment specialists out. So when people will help get the customers the jobs, your kids the jobs, we always contract out. The counselors only provide that basically case management. But there are employment specialists that have an autism endorsement they earn through the University of North Texas. And I created that. And so you could also ask for that. Say, my kid needs help with a job, but I know I'm going to need somebody with that autism expertise. You can ask for that.
That's good to know. Great. And then another question was, do you have suggestions on how or where to find employers who hire and are flexible with autistic individuals getting into the workforce?
We have so many more that are, wow. I mean, it has changed so much. Like just from the way they interview, they're becoming really, really like show me interviews. It's becoming much more like something unheard of 6 years ago, I tell them. I would say there is a thing called Autism Works. And so there's a lot of companies will get together and go to these conferences, and you can kind of see the names like Dell, Google, SAP, Ernst and Young, HEB is a big one. There's a lot of companies that have initiatives, and sometimes you just Google autism initiatives companies and they'll pop up because they have these really big initiatives. And then the workforce boards, honestly, there are some that are more proactive than others, but one here in Austin, I have a workforce board guy, business manager, who has really done amazing. And he's tapped into all these like more industry manufacturing jobs that they're like, we want these people on the spectrum. They're amazing. Like they do things better than and they didn't know about it. And they have this turnover. And so now they're like, please flood us with them. So it depends on your area. But most companies, because that's kind of a corporate social responsibility thing that you see them do, it's a good thing for them too. But if you Google, they'll advertise it on their website if they have a specific initiative for them. But most, when you start, if they haven't had somebody, I would always make sure that you have a lot of support. So you want your A game on if it's a new employer, because they're going to come in a little scared. They're coming a little bit like, I don't know what to expect. And so once you win them over with one, the rest is history. I will tell you, Lowe's is really display friendly. So is Home Depot, I have found. Michael's was very friendly. HEB, they need bakers. They cannot keep bakers. So like my youngest is going to look at that one too, not just like loading carts and all that kind of stuff. So we want those advanced employment too, right? We want to, our kids have skills. Both of mine, college is not going to be their friend, but they've got skills and I want to see them do them.
That's great. And then another question, when your son worked 10 to 12 hours a week, and I forgot where it was at Home Depot, but did they have a shortened school day, or were they kind of juggling work and school and homework, and like how did that work out?
For him, because he was in a vocational adjustment class, and so part of his day, or it was like every other day, was shortened, and so he could go and work. Yeah, so he didn't have to juggle school and work. My other one did juggle school and work for a little bit, but it was only a couple hours, like 3 days a week.
Okay, good.
But they can do it.
Yeah,
that's part of being flexible. We all don't want to do it. We all did it.
That's good. Yeah. Good point. Okay. And then on for the programs like the summer earn and learn and those sort of vocational programs, a couple of things. First, we actually at Autism Society, we have an employment FAQ on our website, and then we put together a list by all the big cities of like how to get in touch with all those sort of summer youth type programs that some start at 14 and some start at 16. So I would encourage everyone to do that. But my question for you, Jennifer, is if there's like a 14 or 15-year-old or, some teen in a city or a small place somewhere in Texas, can they contact Voc Rehab on their own, and can they get support and do some kind of summer work experience and kind of create it through?
They sure can. So I first would make sure to go to their high school if they're that of that age, and find out if there's a Voc Rehab, counselor already attached to that school, and then they can go through them because they'll offer that. And if not, then you could go on your own. I mean, you can go either way, but you're going to get routed to that high school counselor when you apply. Because that's their specialty. So absolutely, if you're interested in summer learn, just call Voc Rehab and they can get you started.
Okay.
The earlier the better, because it is a process you do. It's an eligibility, criteria. I mean, you have to have a disability that causes a barrier to obtaining or maintaining employment. So you got it. It takes a couple months to kind of get in the system. So I just want to give yourself a little leeway. Don't start at May 1st and want to start. Yeah,
that's with everything. Yeah, it does take a lot of planning. We were actually going to start letting people know now because as you mentioned, my son did summer earn and learn through Goodwill and Texas Voc Rehab, and he is a Voc Rehab counselor now. He's 17, but he started, this will be his third summer. He's going to do it this summer, and it's his third summer. So I guess he started when he was 15. But I would really encourage everyone to do it. The first year he had to do virtual because it was COVID. Last year he did get to work at a hotel, and he loved it. And you're right. It's like they really learn good skills, and they're so excited, and they get a paycheck. I mean, they get paid for this as well. It's like great experience, and they're actually getting paid. So they can like work on some money management, and that was an added benefit. But please, we get so many emails at the start of summer being like, what can I do with my kids? So start now. It's great. This is timing because those programs, we got a form for the Austin one last week. So I would encourage everyone to start looking like in January, February. Those programs actually start enrolling pretty early. And like Jennifer said, you have to, for some of them, you're doing it through Texas Workforce as well. And so you have to get in through that and meet with a Voc Rehab counselor. But it's good to get all of those things going now, in my experience.
And they do provide job coaches so that, so if your kiddo needs help, they're not just taking like the ones that don't need support. They'll take the ones who need job coaches. So don't be worried about that. And then also think about it, when they do the summer earn learn, it will now showcase part of your roadmap will be like, he or she had XYZ issues at that summer earn job. Well, great. Awesome. Glad you found that out, because now you have the whole year to work on it. So it can identify, because maybe they don't come up at school, maybe they don't come up in your house, and you put them in this different environment, and they're like, ding, this is an issue you didn't know came up,
Yeah, exactly. And then somebody asked, should we be starting or doing anything now for my son who is 14 years old?
I mean, you can start all of that. So at 14, this thing, unless we start and start talking to school, find out if there is a Voc Rehab counselor there. And you could start going to summer earn learn. You can do that at 14, or you can just take a little class. Just starting thinking about what do you think you want to be, or making sure the social skills are you starting to work on some of those, or a volunteer job, or responsibilities at home. So all those things, 14, it's just never too early, because you're about to get into puberty here pretty soon. And that's fine. Most of our guys get into it really early. I had my clients would get really, really early. At 14, they were full blown into it. And then like my kid literally did not grow until he was 18. And he went from 5'2" to 6'1".
Isn't that crazy? Yeah, you never know. Okay, so 14, there's definitely resources that on our employment thing. I know the summer youth employment program in Austin at least starts at 14, and I'm sure there's a few other ones, so we can post that as well. And then like Jennifer said, ask your school about the Voc Rehab counselors, because they're usually your first contact. And then another question, we got a couple of questions about homeschooling and homeschool resources. It says, do you have any other resources for homeschoolers?
Well, they can access Voc Rehab. So just because you're not in school doesn't mean you can't access it. So I would encourage that. That's just another outlet. I know some of them do an amazing job at pulling people together and coordinating activities, but it's another one you have an option for.
Yeah. So if they're a homeschooler, would they just contact Texas Workforce Commission independently, or would they need to contact the school they were supposed to go to? Or
just contact them independently.
Great. Okay, that's good. Okay, and I think that was the last question.
Okay, well, great. Hopefully this has been helpful.
Oh yeah, it's been great information. It really has. So let me, I'm just gonna flip over. I just want to wait, you will stop. I'm gonna.
You want me to stop sharing?
Yeah, I'm gonna share the last slide. We have a slide coming up. We have another presentation February 24th. So hold on, let me share that before we say bye. I'm gonna try to attempt to do that. Like this may or may not work. Okay, there we go. Yeah. So I just wanted to mention our next topic. So it's actually going to be Dr. Garcia, Michelle Garcia and Brandon Delgado, and they developed a sex ed curriculum for, I think it starts in middle school, but it's actually Virginia passed a law that everyone has to learn it, and it's designed for individuals with disabilities, and it's a tiered curriculum. And she's fantastic and works in a lot of like criminal justice cases. That's how we found her. Unfortunately, we've had a few calls where people have ended up in the criminal justice system. And if they had known some of these things, then may have been avoided. And so, we just want to make sure that it's another important topic, just like this one, but people need to teach their kids with autism, teens and young adults, sex ed topics, and it, can either help them not be a victim of a crime, or, it helps them avoid victimization, or doing something inadvertently that they didn't know was wrong. And we unfortunately see both here sometimes, because we do get calls when people get into trouble, and that's how we ended up finding Dr. Garcia in the first place. But they'll be presenting on February the 24th, and it really is another important topic. So I encourage you to tune in or watch the recording. We'll be recording it as well, but it is a good topic. So we just wanted to talk about that. So I'm going to stop sharing. But that's it. That's our next one. And Jennifer, I just want to say thank you so much to you. I know you're busy. You've got so many things you're involved in, and raising your own kids, which has been great, because I'm, taking notes. So I'm excited that you spent time with us and shared all your helpful tips.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll post any more resources that we get from Jennifer. Either you're trying to find a voc rehab counselor with the training and the autism specialty and all those things, we can definitely connect you. So you can contact us at support@texasautismsociety.org. And we'll also post it with this Facebook video. So I think that's it. And if anyone needs any other autism related questions, feel free to email us or call us as well. So we are here to help. All right. Well, everyone, thanks. I'm going to end this live Facebook now. And feel free to email us and call us with your questions. Thanks.